This is a story of how my brother's sickness and death changed my life. This is a story of how my battle of depression became my family's battle too. This is a story of how I was struggling so bad and all I could do was hold on and pray. This is a story of how my family was struggling so bad and all they could do was hold on and pray. This is a story of how what the enemy meant for evil, God used it for my good, as it says in Genesis 50:20. This is a story of how God stepped in and saved my life. This is a story of how God stepped in and protected and restored my entire family. As I've posted in the past, definitely something that will be hard for me to get through. But opening up myself to the world is scary. But I realize that it's such a beautiful story that I can't not share it. So this is it, and this is my story. And I pray and hope that you will receive this message well, and please bear with me through the ups and downs of this entire testimony. So I'm gonna start really early on. Even as I was a young girl, I've always been a dreamer. So I remember listening to a specific song, Whitney Houston, Give Me One Moment in Time, on my Walkman. And I would go to bed at night listening to all of these inspirational songs. And at the time, I was involved with sports and stuff. So I would imagine myself hitting a win in tennis or huddling with my volleyball team after just a major win. And just envisioning these triumphs in my head while listening to this music. So I was always a dreamer. So those triumphant moments are always things that I had yearned for at an early age. I had always enjoyed music, theater, cinematic things and movies, and just, I was just so into those things. And when I was 8 years old, actually, 8 or 9, my parents saw that I had this love for the piano. We were away at my relative's house in Philly, and I was just playing on the keyboard, and I was just stuck, addicted to it. And they saw that, so that when we got home, they immediately found private lessons for me, and I fell in love with the instrument. So early on as well, I began to write my own music, and all of the songs that were written back then were just based off of, minimal experiences. What seemed to be a big thing at the time, looking back now, was not such a big thing, but it was just, a collection of songs that captured a little girl who grew up and soon realized that life does involve pain, and that growing up is hard. So these were just songs, but everything shifted when my brother got sick with COVID, where these songs took a whole new level of meaning in my life. I remember when I was writing my college essay, and one specific line, actually, my cousin Katie helped me with this line, is, my black and white world was soon replaced with a stained glass window, where more of life's colors began to show. So at the time, my collection of songs, I was going to label it as Color Me Now, or Color Me, because I had felt that growing up, you start to learn all of these truths about reality. You start to grow up and evolve as a person, that life isn't as perfect. Life does involve pain, things of that nature. And I thought that my black and white world was colored, but it was not. That wasn't the case until my brother got sick, where I truly, truly realized the most painful lessons of my life. I'm sure the world remembers that when COVID hit, it was a devastating time for the entire world. And when COVID hit, I remember getting a call from my brother Chi at the time. He was in Boston starting a new job, and he was very sick and had to go to the emergency room because he got COVID. But he also had such excruciating pain at the time where they took a biopsy. And that's when they found out that he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and told him that he had 3 months to live. I just remember receiving this news and was so heartbroken. Because of the COVID quarantine, we were not allowed to see each other or travel. There was a travel ban. He was alone in Boston fighting this all by himself and receiving this diagnosis all by himself. And I'll call him on FaceTime with my girls just to check up on him, and he always kept a brave face, saying that he was okay. But I knew he wasn't. So with all of the unknowns with COVID and finding this out about my brother, my girls were 8 and 5 at the time. My mom and dad were elderly, and you know what they said about COVID and elderly people, very dangerous. So a million things went through my head. A million things about the what ifs. And at the time, Jake and I were actually also, building our dream house, which has always been something we've wanted to do. And that dream came to fruition. But when I received the diagnosis of my brother, I remember calling my sister, my older sister and my older brother, and saying, how could I have this dream without my brother? If he's not going to be here to share in it, what does it even matter? So, since the girls were studying virtually, and this is during the time of travel ban and everyone was home, we had made plans to go to Boston to be with him. We rented out an apartment right next to him. And I was so terrified because I was thinking these things, and this is full honesty, full disclosure here of what in human nature, what I was thinking. Like, what if my girls get sick from COVID during the travel? What if my parents get sick during the travel and get COVID? And what if everyone just passes away? Like, what is gonna happen? My brother is battling cancer. So these were the immediate thoughts going through my head. And I immediately went into a state of panic. So when we arrived in Boston, I was already physically feeling so sick. I could not sleep, I could not eat, I was pacing. I could not calm down at all. And actually the very first night we arrived, we went to visit my brother, and it was just myself, Jake, my 2 girls, my mom and dad. And I remember sitting on the bed with Chi, with my girls. And I remember my oldest daughter, Scarlett, just in tears because she was old enough to recognize how sick her uncle looked. And seeing that broke my heart to a million pieces too, because it reminded me of the growing pains that we go through when we soon discover that, whoa, okay, life is temporary and there's pain involved with growing up. And she had to learn that at the age of 8, that her uncle was sick and that her uncle could die. And I tried my best that night to be present with him, but I do remember being in a state of panic, like, I can't be here. I have to go get rest. I remember telling my mom I did not feel good. I wanted to throw up, and I was pacing. I tried my best. So we sat down for a bit with him, and we were actually able to show him or have him listen to one of the songs at the time called Wait that had already been completed. And I just remember him nodding his head and saying, "This is really cool, it's really dope," with the biggest smile on his face. He was so happy to hear it. And I thought, wow, with everything going on in his life and his physical state, that he would still be able to say these things, which I thought was just courageous of him and just wonderful. But I was still in a rush to leave. And I think that's one of the biggest, many regrets that I have with him, is that shortly after showing him that song, I really said to Jake and my parents, I'm like, I don't feel good. We have to go. We'll come back tomorrow. So as we were headed out, there was this moment in time where I was closing the door, and there was a view of my brother just looking at me leaving, and I looked at him. And I didn't realize then that that would be the last time that I would see him, because it was. You know, I've experienced loss in my past. My grandmother passed away. I was devastated as well when my pet lovebird died. Had relatives pass away. But nothing broke me the way that my brother's parting broke me, because he never got to live a full life. And that's what hurts me the most. So this, for those who may know me too, watching this, may not know as well, I'm a type A personality. I love to be in control, an achiever, go-getter, checklist, right? But at this season in my life, I could not be in control. Not one thing. And that's what broke me down. It's what broke me down. So the next morning, my sister received a call, and she went over to his apartment and then called us and said, "You all have to come," because he was in bed and no longer responsive, kind of like in a coma state. So my parents went over there, my older sister and my older brother, and I stayed back at the apartment with my girls and my niece. I didn't get to say goodbye to him in person. They put him on the phone, and all I could hear was deep breaths of him in response to my voice. So that last night was the last night I had with him. And I kept thinking, why, God? Why couldn't I just be myself? Why couldn't I just feel good? Why couldn't I just be in control of the situation so that I could be the best version of myself to be with my brother? Why? These are things I couldn't understand and I didn't know. So he took his last breath that day, and I wasn't there. But my parents and my brother and my sister told me that when he took his last breath, that he immediately looked so handsome, as if the sickness had left his body, as if he was never sick at all. At that moment, the way they explained to me, it was as if God had taken him to heaven, where there was no longer pain, no longer suffering, and all of those things had just left his body, and he was just the beautiful, handsome brother that I remembered him to be. Or that's how they would explain it to me. So after my brother passed, I didn't truly grieve him. I was too consumed with finding out what was wrong with me. I went to the doctor, had them take blood work, trying to figure out what was wrong with me and telling them, why does my chest hurt? Why does the back of my chest hurt? Why can't I sleep? Why can't I eat? I don't feel right. I can't feel calm, that there's something wrong with me, because I physically felt so sick. And one doctor specifically said, okay, I really think you need to go on antidepressants for now. And I remember stating specifically, I'm not depressed. I'm just very anxious. But the days got long, the nights got long, wasn't eating, wasn't sleeping. So I said, you know what? I might as well try and take it, because I needed some relief. So I started antidepressants, many antidepressants. I kept trying so many different antidepressants, one after the other, on top of anxiety meds. And things got worse. I began to feel numb. And I would sleep, but it was as if, like a robotic type of sleep, where I would fall asleep, but I would wake up still pretty early in the morning, like my eyes would just go wide open. And I remember feeling the dread of having to face another day in the state that I was. And I'm thinking, okay, it's been X amount of time on this antidepressant. This is not working. Let's go on to the next, or let's try something new, or let's add something. But something was not right, because I started feeling extremely numb. I could not enjoy anything. I remember very strong thoughts of not wanting to live. And then I remember thinking, as I saw cars on a busy road, as if I just wanted to walk straight into those cars and end my life. And I thought to myself, what is going on? That I would have these thoughts. Something's not right. I had lost so much weight, probably down to 80 pounds or so. I would have just moments of crying and meltdowns in public places. I remember texting random people or many people just asking for them to come pray over me. Just crying like, I need help. I don't know what's wrong. And I had no idea it was because of the medication. And I had this like thought over and over. Why couldn't I be excited for anything? Everything in my life. A beautiful family, a beautiful homecoming, and had a great job, but yet nothing made me happy. I walked around looking down. I was living life, but not feeling alive. That I couldn't even watch a TV show or enjoy a movie or anything. It was just my mind, my brain, something was off and imbalanced. I had to take a medical leave from work, and I don't even remember how that process started or how it got handled, but yeah, there's so many things that are a blur to me, that when I look back, I don't remember interactions with people or conversations, but the pain I remember, and it's very familiar as I'm speaking about it. And I would go to church just in worship, and I remember crying while singing the words. And looking back now, it's completely like sacrificial praise, right? So sacrificial praise is just being able to worship God even in the midst of all of the horrible things or all of the things that don't make sense, but still knowing that God is God. And I still held on to my faith through all of it. There are so many journals that I had written in, and from time to time I'll try to read a page now, and it's hard reading it too, because I'm like, wow, I cannot believe I went through that, or I can't believe that these words were written. And I remember one Mother's Day, I had written a letter to my mom, just pouring out my heart to her, telling her that I'm so sorry that I couldn't be that daughter to her, or haven't been, and that I miss being that daughter to her. Because I know that she just lost her son, but she probably feels like she lost me as well as a daughter, and the same for my father, and the same for my brother and my sister. They probably felt like, not probably, I know that they felt, or they felt like they were losing me and my nieces and my nephews who lost an aunt, my girls who had to see their mother endure so much, my husband who had to carry and juggle all of it while I couldn't. And I have all of these beautiful drawings by my girls as well, where they would write down scripture and give it to me, and write letters reminding me that there is hope and that there's joy in the morning, and how much they loved me. I know God carried my family. Without a doubt, God carried my family, because there's just no way. So almost every night as a family, we would pray together as a family, but my dad would also just specifically put a Bible on my head and pray for my healing. I remember that. And one morning, my parents shared something with me to help bring encouragement. Because throughout all of this, I know their source of strength was God, and they continued to pursue God and seek him through all of it. And God gave them a sign one morning, and they were so happy. My mom and dad were praying for an answer. Like, how are you going to heal my daughter, Lily? And she told me that morning, she opened up the Bible, and it was right at the story of Job. And as she was telling me this, I saw my dad cry tears of joy. So if you guys know the book of Job, most faithful servant of God, I'm not trying to say I'm the most faithful servant of God, that's just the story of Job, but everything was taken away from him. Everything. But in the end, he was given everything back in tenfold. And so my mom said to me, Lily, just hold on a little longer. All of this is for something, and we will know why, but you're going to be okay. And at that moment, I felt peace and assurance, but also at that moment, a revelation came, and I thought, and I spoke to Jake about this as well. No more medication. No more medication. So the psychiatrist I was seeing at the time agreed to that and said, you know what, let's try non-medication. Let's try ketamine, and let's try ECT. So we first tried ketamine, and that didn't work very well because I specifically remember being in the hospital bed where it's IV fluid through my veins, and I was telling the nurse something's not right because I felt 10 times more anxious. I'm like, something's not right. And they all rushed to just get everything off of me. So ketamine didn't work. So the gold standard of treatment for depression is called ECT, and I'm gonna have to read off of this. It's electroconvulsive therapy. It's a procedure done under general anesthesia in which small electric currents are passed through the brain, intentionally triggering a brief seizure. And ECT seems to cause changes in the brain chemistry that can quickly reverse symptoms of certain mental health conditions. So with ECT, I remember right before they would put me to sleep, I would always whisper the name of Jesus right before I went out, before they induced the seizure. I had to go to this 3 times a week for maybe 4 to 6 months. And that was hard too, because I had seen things I'd never seen before. And it made me understand my brother a lot more. But there were people there, all different ages, who were there for depression treatment. And I would literally feel myself just breaking down, watching this in front of me. Like, God, how could a world like this exist where people are not happy and have to come here to get treated so that they can feel happiness? And it's like, why am I here? Why did it have to come to this? And I remember this one moment where I felt God's embrace, saying, Lily, it pains me to see you go through this, but keep your eyes open. Look around. I need you to see this. I need you to see this, and you will understand later. And I remembered a verse that would explain that perfectly in John 13:7, where I felt Jesus telling me, Lily, you do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand. So I knew that I was there for a reason. And I knew that I would be changed by all of this for a reason. That somehow my life and season and journey through this is not all for nothing. It is meant for something. And God allowed me to go through this season so that I can somehow help someone else in the world and remind them that there is healing and hope in Jesus. So whether in large part to just stopping antidepressants and anxiety meds altogether and beginning ECT, things started to balance out. And I remember the moments of breakthrough. One night after prayer with the family, I said to my nephew Christian, I'm like, I want to play goldfish with grandma and grandpa. It came out of nowhere, but it made my parents so happy. I started to eat more. I love food, and my appetite was returning, was starting to gain my weight back slowly. I was dancing with my girls to music, rapping to songs. I love rap, by the way. I wish I was a rapper. And just planning birthday parties and anticipating trips and watching movies with my girls and being able to focus and enjoy it. So I knew that something was happening. I actually started talking to a lot of the nurses at the treatment center as well, and talking to them about food, like, oh my gosh, you love Thai food, you need to try drunken noodle. I remember that specifically as well. And there's one nurse in particular that I really gravitated towards, and he said to me one time when I was starting to feel better, you look so much better, and now that you're speaking, I gotta say, Lily, there's just something about the way you speak, and there's just something about you. And I remember in my last session with ECT, I had known it was going to be my last session in my heart. And I said to him, you keep making a difference here because you're making a difference. And he said to me, you go make a difference out there. So along the way and in this journey of ECT, it was a very difficult awakening. Right? I learned about so much outside of my normal world, but I wouldn't take it back for anything because I met so many beautiful people along the way. I got to witness things that helped define my purpose and mission for today. But in this season of healing, there was one very difficult part. When I was starting to get better, right? I said to Jake out of nowhere one day, oh my gosh, my brother is gone. And I fell to my knees. I fell to the floor, and he had to come catch me. And I just cried so loud. And I let it all out, crying for my brother. So it was the grief that I had to go through, delayed, but it came. And in that moment when it hit very hard. But it felt good. It felt good because at that moment I was grieving him, and I was not consumed with how I was feeling or what was wrong with me. It was just a moment of missing my brother and realizing that he was gone and that I was never going to see him again. So when I lost my brother, I hadn't realized how close we were and how much of an impact he made on me. We weren't the closest growing up. Had our fights and bickers. Any sibling, would, right? I never understood him though. He went through some very dark times. I remember him calling me, and he was an alcoholic, so when he called, I knew that he had been drinking. And he would say to me, I have failed you as a brother. So this is like a redundant conversation we would always have every time he would get into that state and he would call me. It would always be about, I have failed you as a brother. I'm so sorry. But you live in a bubble. You have no idea what it feels like to feel the way that I do. And I would just listen to him. And I couldn't understand because I hadn't experienced mental health the way that he did or the way that I have now. And he would apologize for moving away on my high school graduation day. He moved away to Seattle. He would apologize for all of these things on this phone call, but what resonated with me was that he said I lived in a bubble. And it's just crazy because years later, and how his death impacts me, I am out of that bubble now, I would say, where I am able to understand it in a whole new light. And that's another part of me that regrets not knowing more or why. I know that there was a deep pain from everything he was going through, that there was a root cause to it all. But I never took the time to really understand why or ask. I just assumed he had an alcohol problem. But I know that the alcohol was just his way of numbing the pain and processing everything, so that there's more to his pain that I will never understand. But I know that God knew. I know that God knows, and I know that the moment God took him to heaven, that was when all of that pain went away. There was no more suffering for him, and that brings me so much comfort. But we got very close in the last, I would say, 7 years before he passed. He lived in Rhode Island for a bit, then he moved to Boston. Right before COVID hit, actually, he called me and said, because of his new job in Boston, he was very excited. He said, you and Jake find a vacation place, a suite, whatever you want. I'll pay for it. Get mom and dad to go. We'll go for a long weekend. I was so excited. Never got to do that with him because he got sick shortly after that. But he was that brother, the annoying, obnoxious brother. He would chase me around with insects and bugs outside because he knew I couldn't stand it. He would pick his boogers and fling it at me, and I thought it was the most disgusting thing. It is the most disgusting thing. But there are so many fond memories. I remember growing up. I had maybe in elementary school, I was walking home from school when it was safe to walk home that time, and a boy was following me and kept playing with my hair. And right before we got home, I guess my brother saw outside the window and he came out and scared him away. And I remember going roller skating, and I was just learning how to roller skate, and I couldn't make it around, and he had to carry me while he roller skated. And he was just so wonderful to the girls. They love their Uncle Cheese. They love his banana bread. He's a good cook. He's a really good cook. I would never tell him, but now he knows. He's a really good cook. You're a good cook, Chi. And the times he would come home to visit and say, hurry up, get my dish ready, or can you cook me this? So we had grown closer the last, several years before he passed. And I went through some very difficult things with him some challenges that he faced as a result of his alcoholism as well, which was very hard watching him go through those things. But he had a very, very difficult life. And that's what breaks my heart, is that he never got to live his best life, to marry or have children, to be that wonderful person. He has the biggest heart. He loves to give. His contagious laugh that only he could do. But I have all of these beautiful memories of him, and what I would say to him now, and I know you're listening, is that you gave me the greatest gift. You always said that you didn't do anything for me as your older brother, but boy, have you. The greatest gift of perspective. And the reason why I'm doing all of the things that I'm doing now, along with Jake, is because of what we went through, and that's a gift you've given us. The courage to be able to go after the dreams we've always had. And you've brought meaning and purpose to all of those songs that were ever written. For that, I thank you, Chi. And we will keep you alive. We will keep you alive. So Boston was a city that he loved. And when he got his recent job there, he was so very excited. But that's also the city in which he took his last breath. So it was a city that I avoided going to till this last summer when we went and we walked around, and I remember being in a lawn and looking up and seeing UMass General, the hospital. There's just flashes of feelings coming back of remembering those times and knowing that he was in that hospital when he was diagnosed. And walking around his old apartment, seeing the street sign and knowing, oh, this is where he used to live. I called my older brother and sister and told them how I was feeling. And they reminded me, it's just process it, take it all in. We're never going to forget him, but it's how we live our life as a tribute to him. So I don't think that I would have the boldness I do now to finally go after the things that I've always wanted. The dreams, the goals, the aspirations, and so it's all going back to the very beginning where I said I was always a dreamer, right? I've always dreamt of a triumphant moment in my life at a very young age, and this is my triumphant moment where I feel that I have reached the mountaintop after some very difficult valleys, and I'm looking out into the sky because I know my God carried me. And I know that I got through it because there was a strength that sustained me. And I know that God provided my family with that strength, the friendships that I had with that strength. And there's so many beautiful things that came out of this, countless friendships that I could not picture my life without now. Because when I was very sick, I walked into a prayer room at a church, and that is where I met so many wonderful people. People that stuck with me, that orchestrated Zoom calls with me weekly or, every other day or as needed, just to talk to me, just to pray with me. And I knew faithful friendships that God sent to us. Incredible people displaying God's love. And there are just so many beautiful things from this story. A lot of painful things, but a lot of beautiful things as well. And my girls were untouched by this in a way because they came out of this stronger. They're still happy, they're still joyful, and they got to witness God's miracle firsthand and how God healed their mom, which is me. And I remind them all the time, you saw firsthand what I looked like, what I went through. And I know it was scary for you, but always remember how mommy was healed. And as I'm sharing this testimony, I don't want to take away from anyone else out there who has to be on antidepressants or medications. That's not my intent at all. I just know that for me, those are the things that I did not need. And when I started those things, that is when I hit rock bottom. But I believe with all of my heart that I had to go through all of these things, and God orchestrated all of these things so that I would be able to fully understand the way that I do now. And I just want to thank you, everyone out there, for all of your prayers, your support, and my prayer warrior sisters, my prayer room brothers, my childhood friends, my family across the state, everywhere. I'm pretty sure people were talking and praying like, oh, what's going on with Lily? What can we do to help? And probably felt helpless, and all you could do is pray for me. I just want to thank you. Thank you to my coworkers for all of their support as well. Thank you for everyone who sent magnets of encouragement, letters, books, text messages. But the beauty of this testimony is that I can put it out there, and I can even say to many of you that you witnessed my healing. I actually also remember when I was starting to break through things that I started a conversation with my neighbor as well. One day it was snowing, and we were outside building a snowman, and I was just like, oh, let me talk to this person. And I had known, something was happening because I wanted to engage, but I would say even, people around me have noticed or witnessed a miracle or witnessed my healing as well. So I'm just, so eternally grateful for everyone and everyone's support. And the way that I want to live my life now is I just want to be a blessing however I can. I want to keep sharing the light and love of the Lord. I want to go after the things that I've always dreamed of, and I just want to tell the whole world that whatever path God has chosen for your healing, the only way you're going to know is if you seek Him. Seek Him. Give it a try. Talk to Him. Go to a local church. Say a prayer to yourself even at this very moment. Invite Him into your heart. Ask Him to orchestrate the healing in your life. However that looks, I know that God will make a way. And I'm a living testimony to that, living proof right before you. When I was going through depression, I felt stuck. I felt, when am I going to get out of this? Why do I even have to keep living? There's nothing for me to live for. But there's so much for you to live for. And the pain, the anxieties, and the brokenness that you feel, God knows. God knows. So you are not alone, and He is here to bring that healing to you. In Joel chapter 2, verses 25 to 26, God says, I will restore to you the years that the locusts ate. And yes, it felt like I lost years through this mental health battle. I was also grieving myself, who I used to be, because I could not even recognize myself. but I gained it all back in some. I'm happy to say that in the year of 2023, I experienced an incredible summer that I remember. I remember taking my girls trick-or-treating and laughing, and looked forward to cooking an incredible Thanksgiving dinner and having a Christmas that I would remember. And I loved the feeling of looking forward to the year ahead. I was not at all in this place for previous holidays, but my God delivered me, He healed me, and He made me whole again. The trials I face never truly go away. I do struggle with PTSD, but that's another story and video. And there is an ache I still feel thinking of this time period in my life. There's still an ache I feel when I think of my brother, and I think of him often, just about every day. Not a day passes when I don't. He visits me often in dreams, and sometimes I wake up crying just because in my dream I'm hugging him so hard, and once I'm awake I realize I can't do that anymore. That pain is there, it's recurrent, but I've learned to live with it. But at the same time, I feel such a fullness and a beauty and appreciation that has made me stronger, and I know this is only by the grace of God. Anxiety was my weakness. It was the root of my sickness when my brother became ill. But anxiety does not have the same power it used to have over me. God restored me. In Isaiah 61:3 it says, "Bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair." And wow, God certainly did this. Turned these ashes into such beautiful things. The purpose behind all of this is the mission, and the mission behind this is a story that mental health is real. It's prevalent, it's relevant, and it's something that is not discussed often enough. It's not something that you can easily fix. And I think that was the most frustrating thing about it is I wanted to go to the doctor for blood work to diagnose me with something that I can fix easily, but what I was going through could not be fixed easily. There was no lab work that can confirm what I was going through. And it's important for me to tell everyone that through these mental health battles, whether you are a believer or not, these are things we experience. But when you invite God into the mix and when you invite Him into the battle, that's when it becomes His battle for which He will fight for you. And I think that is what makes all the difference. And we can't do it alone. We cannot. So God calls us to lay this burden on Him so that He can fight through it with us and for us, and to bring us to the very end of it, to give us the endurance to get through it, to sustain us through it until and lead us to the quiet waters. So that's what I want to encourage you with today. Let our God lead you to the quiet waters, because He infinitely provides. I am specifically grateful for my husband as well, Jake, and his strength and his support and how he got through between juggling his work, our daughters, all of my appointments. I know that God carried Jake, and I am so blessed to have a husband like him who relies on God, who is above it all. Jake faithfully kept leading us back to worship in church no matter what condition I was in. My daughters are so blessed to have a father like him. Our entire family is blessed to have him not only as my husband and my daughter's father, but as their son, son-in-law, brother-in-law, and uncle. He is my best friend, my soulmate, and I know God brought us together to fulfill a very important purpose through our shared love of worship and music. God strengthened our testimony for the service He is calling us to, and there is substantial meaning behind the music we've written because it's backed by such an incredible story. This is also the story of how my brother's story will forever live on through ours.